Welcome to the Three Links Oddcast Christmas episode. For this very special episode of the Three Links Oddcast, brothers Toby and Ainsley are joined by guest host Christopher McHale of Covenant Lodge No. 6 in Missoula, Montana. We're going to share updates from some of our previous guests, talk about what makes Odd Fellowship meaningful for each of us, and share a Hanukkah message from Brother Michael Greenziger, Deputy Grand Master of California. So sit back and relax, grab a big steaming mug of holiday cheer as you enjoy the Three Links Oddcast Christmas episode. Welcome to the very special Christmas episode of the Three Links Oddcast. I'm one of your hosts, Toby Hansen.
I'm Ainsley Heilich, and we are joined tonight by our special guest host, Christopher McHale.
Hello to all of our friends in Lake Stevens, Washington.
Now, for those of you listening wondering why we are saluting Lake Stevens, there is an anomaly in the podcasting world where a whole bunch of IP addresses were assigned to the small town of Lake Stevens, Washington, which is not far from where I live. It's about, 90 miles north of me, something like that. And there's an Amazon server farm that has a whole bunch of IP addresses, and they've been assigned to other places, but the registry has not been updated. So for the last couple months, podcasters have been getting hits on all of these podcast downloads for this small town of about 30,000 people. So no, there are not actually that many listeners in Lake Stevens, but gosh, we sure wish there were. And we're glad that you're out there listening wherever you are. So this is our big Christmas episode. And to celebrate, we're going to do a couple things. First, we're going to look back on some of the episodes that we've done so far this year, because the podcast is turning 6 months old. Woohoo!
Wow.
What episode number is this?
This is, I think, 15. I have to check and be sure, but I'm pretty sure this is episode 15. That includes the Halloween Cemetery episode teaser that was only 2 minutes long. That episode got its own number. So probably this is only the 14th full-length episode, but we'll call it episode number 15. So
we're not sell yourself short. Come on, content is content.
We're not the kind of podcasters who are like, I'm going to name this episode 2.6.3 because it's only 38 seconds long and it's part of the subscript to this other episode. No, we're not like that. We just seasons and episodes.
Well, 2020 version 2 starts in just a couple weeks, so you could start your renaming process. So
yeah, has anybody tried turning this year off and turning it back on again?
Oh my God.
I'm sure
I saw a really good meme on Facebook that had 2020, but the O's were rolls of toilet paper, and then below it shows 2021. And so what it was is basically empty roll, like just a cardboard tube turned on its side. So it was like basically like it's the same thing but even worse. I'm like, oh no.
I know you never would have thought there would be a day when Costco would limit how much stuff you could buy, but here we are. Well, we've got some wonderful updates from previous guests. We reached out to all of our previous guests and asked them if perhaps they would like to share what's been going on with them since they were on. I'll go ahead and start with the updates. I got an email from Brother Wayne Gertz in Ontario. He's on the Sovereign Grand Lodge Communications Committee. And we talked to him, I believe it was in episode 3, when we were asking him about communication and when things go well, when things go kind of poorly. Now, before I have to get into this, Ainsley, I would like to compliment you for your excellent work on the Grand Lodge of Illinois website.
Oh, thank you.
The reason I say that is because I got to use it today. I had an inquiry that popped up on Reddit from somebody who said, are there any lodges in Northern Illinois? And I was able to go to the website and say, as a matter of fact, there are several lodges in Northern Illinois.
Ding, ding, ding.
You remember from that time that you were a member of a barbershop quartet in Skokie, Illinois.
So that's an example of one of the things we talked about with Brother Wayne, which is how Grand Lodges really need to have accessible information on the web for random people who say, hey, I've woken up this morning and I want to be an Oddfellow. So it's important to put that out there and say, this is how you, random person, can become an Oddfellow. So we asked Wayne about some of that and about what's been going on with him since the episode we recorded back in August, I think he was on. He says, hello, Toby. Still keeping busy here on the Education Committee and mainly the official Facebook page. There is still a healthy activity on Facebook. Also, a lot of lodges are keeping Facebook pages and creating interest. As for myself, one of my lodges is able to meet in person using the 6 feet distance rule inside and wearing masks when moving. No passwords are being taken, and the other lodge is having very successful Zoom meetings. Have a Merry Christmas, Brother Wayne. So we appreciate that update from Wayne. And I think that brings up something very important. With lodges, you know, conditions are different in different parts of the country, and like Brother Wayne is in Canada, he's in Ontario. Because of the different nature of the pandemic in places, lodges are having to find some creative new ways of keeping in themselves engaged. And he mentioned a couple of those. You can have lodge meetings in person with a certain amount of social distancing, not taking up the signs, the grips, the passwords, doing things like that. But you can also have online presence, Zoom meetings, Facebook groups. There's a lot of stuff like that, which can be done very successfully to keep lodges and their members engaged.
Absolutely. I think using the tools that we all have at our disposal right now is the best way to keep it going. It's not as good as meeting in person, but having, you know, either a Facebook group or doing a Zoom meeting is a great way for everybody to at least keep in contact and to be able to still do donations and vote on general housekeeping matters for your lodge.
I think it's also really important for an organization of ours to be adaptable, especially because that's not something that we're used to having to do. You know, we have rituals. You know, like you do something the same way so many times that it's considered a ritual. You know, you're talking, you've got it down the way that you want it. So it is interesting to see how we are adapting in a, you know, really unprecedented times. You know, they weren't making adaptations like this during World War II.
And, you know, another great sort of side benefit that's come out of this is with lodges holding more online events, you can go visit another lodge without leaving your home. On Monday night, I had the pleasure of interacting with Cupertino Lodge number 70 in California. And I got to play some music for them, share what I was doing as Sovereign Grand Musician, and, you know, just meet some really great brothers and sisters there in California that I wouldn't have otherwise got to meet were it not for the fact that the pandemic has forced these lodges to do a lot more activity online. Now, one thing, I got to put on my past Grand Master hat here. Be sure and check the regulations in your jurisdiction because each jurisdiction is handling the idea of online meetings differently. So don't just assume you can do something one way because you heard about it done that way in another jurisdiction.
Good point.
Now, Ainsley, have you heard from any of our previous guests?
Yes. So I reached out to Justin Bailey, who was on the immediately previous episode. So not too much time has passed since we have spoken to him, but he did have some updates. He said things in Pennsylvania are starting to kind of slow down again with the rising numbers, but the lodge that they were working on getting started in Bethlehem is really getting close to getting going, and they're working on getting the last few people signed up and getting the paperwork finished. So that is still chugging along to bring a lodge back to the east end of the Lehigh Valley. That's fantastic. Still hoping to get hold of somebody in the Stroudsburg, Monroe County area and the Poconos to maybe get a lodge back for the Monroe County area. So if anybody listening in the northeastern Pennsylvania wants to reach out to Justin Bailey, hit us up. I'll get you in touch with him. And he said brought a few people into the order, and different branches are moving along. So yeah, it sounds like they've been still making progress, little progress, but still progress. And for that just being in 2 weeks, I think that's pretty notable.
You know, I have to say, I am so impressed with the amount of creativity and energy Brother Justin is bringing to the jurisdiction of Pennsylvania. Because Pennsylvania is going to be coming up on their bicentennial this coming year. Their Grand Lodge was founded in 1821.
Wow.
And what a great way to celebrate 200 years of Odd Fellowship in the Keystone State with a new lodge in Bethlehem. That would be fantastic.
Absolutely.
And speaking of new lodges, just as a sidelight here, I don't know if you brothers saw the news this week, but the new lodge just got chartered in Chester, Virginia, Chester number 281.
I saw that. It's fantastic. I am very, very, very pleased that Nick got that up and running in a pretty speedy manner from starting off as not being a member at all. Of course, it's kind of south and slightly west of Richmond, Virginia, and I went to college there. So, of course, that, hits a little pride moment for me too.
Well, you should be proud, and for a lot of reasons. I think when we see something like this, or the new lodge that was just chartered in Alexandria, Louisiana, not that long ago, it demonstrates the power and the appeal of Odd Fellowship. There are so many challenges that we face as an organization, and all of us personally have run into those periodically for whatever reason, whether it's a Grand Lodge that isn't always responsive to the needs of new members, or whether it's an organizational problem or not being able to get supplies that you need. Despite all of those challenges, and despite the ongoing pandemic, the call of Odd Fellowship is so strong that there are still people out there discovering it and saying, Odd Fellowship is so valuable and so important, I need to be a part of it. And so they are finding ways to overcome those challenges, and they're working on it, and they're making it happen. And we as an organization are so much richer for having those kind of motivated, dedicated people moving into our ranks.
Totally. And I think during the pandemic, I feel like we've opened more new lodges during the pandemic than we have in the previous year. And then in the previous year, I feel like we opened more lodges than the year before that. So I feel like every year that I'm seeing more and more, it's like I do feel like there's a ball rolling as people I feel like they're looking for community and deciding to make their own intentional communities, and finding that the structure of Odd Fellowship is a perfect way to create their intentional community.
Something else about that, people are starting to realize with the kind of enforced isolation that's come about from the pandemic, socializing is important, and it's much easier to socialize when you're in some sort of a structured group, like belonging to a lodge, belonging to a club, a community association, a neighborhood block party, you know, any kind of organization where things are set up and you have certain expectations, makes it much easier to socialize within those boundaries. And I think that is a huge appeal of Odd Fellowship, because even if you're someone, and I know we all know people like this, let's say you're a little socially awkward, you don't always know what to say when you're with a group of new people. How much easier is it to socialize when you have a book sitting in front of you that tells you, this is what you say. You are the warden tonight. You say this. And then that gives you something to talk about with strangers at the end of the meeting. Those strangers end up becoming your friends.
I feel personally attacked by that statement.
That's okay, Ainsley. We won't put you in any kind of high pressure situations like the warden.
Yeah.
Maybe left scene supporter for tonight.
Okay.
Well, you know, on that note, we've also had some successes with connecting listeners who are interested with lodges. I think probably our current greatest success is our group of listeners in Durango, Colorado. We've been watching the download numbers for Durango keep going up and up. And a listener, Matt, reached out to our co-host, Sergio, and said, I hear what you guys are talking about. This is great. I want to be a part of it. And contacting the Grand Lodge of Colorado, we were able to get Matt in touch with their Grand Secretary, who's the wonderful past Sovereign Grand Master, Doug Pittman. And Doug was able to get Matt and some of his friends and family members in touch with a lodge not too far away. And so Matt has filled out his application and he's ready to join, all because of our little podcast here.
That's wonderful.
So that brings us to another update that we got. If you remember, I think it was episode 4 where we had Brother Mike Zarell, who was the Grand Master of New York. And the Grand Lodge of New York went through a significant reorganization just before the beginning of his term as Grand Master. Sovereign Grand Lodge came in and fixed some problems for them, got the books balanced, and got them going in the right direction again. We had a rather extensive conversation with him about what it's like to take over a Grand Lodge and have to rebuild it from almost nothing. He sent us a nice email. It said, "Sisters and brothers all, great idea, Brother Toby. As far as what is going on with me, things are pretty quiet for obvious reasons. But I'm thinking a lot about 2021. My best guess is that New York will be able to have its annual session in September. I'll probably be rescheduling the Grand Master's Gala for appointed officers again. Originally scheduled for May of 2020, I think this is about the 4th or 5th time I've had to push it back. The Grand Lodge of New York still has a lot of organizational I's to dot and T's to cross, so my executive committee is in touch via email almost daily working on things, and we teleconference once a month. We instituted a new lodge in Saugerties in September, which is a wonderful and all too rare occurrence. And we actually gave a shout out. That was Washington Irving number 20 in Saugerties, New York. So he continues on, my home lodge, Rockville Center 279, is meeting. Things aren't like they used to be, but we still have a lot of brothers showing up despite the safety protocols we are following. It's been really heartening to see that the brothers are still so into it, even in the face of the inconveniences. Before Thanksgiving, we had a turkey drive / lodge cleanup day. Food insecurity is a problem in our community, even in families that this time of year last year never could have conceived of such a thing. My associate lodge, Mineola Pacific number 125, is much the same. Meetings are well attended, and we held a food drive outside of a local supermarket before Thanksgiving. Both lodges initiated a few members in October. The new brothers are in 100% attendance so far. I think that's it. Look forward to listening to the episode when it airs. Have a happy, healthy, and prosperous Christmas, Hanukkah, and holiday wishes to all. And here's to Odd Fellowship in 2021.
Now that is an update.
Yes, that Mike is such a fantastic grandmaster. I can tell you from personal experience, having served as grandmaster, I had an easy term. I had an amazing grand secretary, Laurel Deloney, who's a 2-time past grandmaster herself, who made sure that I was always doing the right thing, always following the code, always having everything set up for me as I went on. And for Mike to have to go into a situation where he's basically rebooting the Grand Lodge and having had to do it now, I think, for a little over a year and a half, he is just doing a tremendous job. So all of our hats are off to you, Brother Mike, back there in New York. And Brother Chris, that's your old stomping grounds on Long Island, isn't it?
It is. I spent a lot of my youth in Rockville Center, actually. There was a record store that I used to go to all the time there. Its name is escaping me, but I spent a lot of time there. Spent a lot of money that I shouldn't have, on things I shouldn't have been listening to.
There's never anything wrong with spending money on music. That is always a good idea.
I don't know.
It pays my bills.
At 13 years old, should anyone be listening to Morrissey or Slayer?
Wow.
I feel like that's exactly when that happens.
Yeah, well, this is what it looks like when that happens.
Exactly.
Now wait a minute. Our viewer or our listeners cannot see this. You are holding up your completely tattooed hand to show that there's something wrong with listening to Slayer and Morrissey at 13. Yet one of the other co-hosts is a tattoo artist. Ainley's probably sitting there going, well, yeah, you could have some more ink. I could get some. There's some room on your face.
I'm like, yeah.
I don't think it has anything to do with my gruesome looks. I think it's just more my my sensibilities and just overall lack of personality. Really.
I don't know. I've heard that acerbic New York wit a few times. You might have a little more personality than you let on.
Maybe. Some might call it personality. Some call it a personality disorder. Whatever. I'll be here all night.
Well, even though this is our Christmas episode, we here at the Three Links Oddcast are a very ecumenical bunch. And we appreciate all of those of you who are celebrating holidays other than Christmas at this time of year. And so we reached out to one of our favorite members, and that's Brother Michael Greenziger, who's the Deputy Grand Master of California. And we asked him to record a very special Hanukkah message for all of our Jewish listeners. So we're going to take an opportunity and play that for you right now.
Happy Hanukkah and Chag Sameach to all Oddfellows who are celebrating. The story of Hanukkah is about the Jewish people's liberation from the Seleucid Empire and the rededication of the Holy Temple in Jerusalem to the service of God. These events took place over 2,000 years ago, but still retain plenty of relevance today. When Hanukkah is discussed, there's often a focus on the miracle of the flask of oil, which should have only burned for a single day, but yet burned for the full 8 days until new oil could be produced for use in the temple. This is only half the story, however, with the miraculous military victory over foreign conquerors as the other main narrative. Unlike many other historical persecutors of the Jewish people, the new regime which reigned in Israel at that time wasn't interested in the extermination of Jewish lives, but rather the extinguishing of the Jewish soul. The invading forces fell prey to a viewpoint all too common among the powerful in our world, believing that their culture was superior to all the other cultures around them. As in other regions they controlled, they no longer allowed the Jewish people to practice their native religion or other cultural practices, instead replacing them with the empire's own ideas about how people ought to live their lives. Due to the heroic leadership of the Maccabees, the Jewish people were able to rally together and overthrow their oppressors, restoring their independence. These historical events reminded the Jewish people of the importance of staying true to ourselves and carrying out our mission in the world. I think there's also a lesson in here for Oddfellows as well, regardless of religious persuasion. The principles that we stand for, our values, and our traditions are of great worth to us and to the world. We may not be under the domination of a foreign power, but we are often under assault from mainstream culture, which seeks to persuade us to look out only for ourselves and not to labor for the good of our brothers and sisters. Modern society often lulls us into passivity with its forms of mindless entertainment and focus on meaningless achievements. If we want to be true to our mission as Oddfellows, we need to reject the idea that we must be just like everyone else around us. We must celebrate our own uniqueness and those principles and practices which comprise our own contribution to the world. Let us remember the power of a few dedicated individuals can be enough to change the course of human history for the good. May we ever dedicate ourselves to this purpose as we meet together in our lodges and as we make our way in the outside world. I hope you all have a joyous holiday season and a blessed new year.
Thank you, Brother Michael, for that inspiring message about Hanukkah and Odd Fellowship. With that, we're going to listen to a special message from our sponsors, Pig and a Pug Bath Stuff. If you like bathing with soap, you'll love Pig and a Pug.
This is an actor portrayal. Hi, I'm Amanda, the brains and brawn behind Pig and a Pug, where I use only the best materials to give you the best products possible. For those that don't know, I'm based in the beautiful mountains of Montana, and right now it's very cold outside, so this is the perfect opportunity to give you guys a little bit of a news update. I just wanted to take a quick second to announce the upcoming release of our Christmas-themed soaps that will be shipping the first week of December. These will make fantastic gifts for those you love. With 6 different custom-tailored scents, there will be something for everyone. Know any Harry Potter fans? We have a selection of soaps for both kids and adults that will be shipping this coming week. We are also planning some Harry Potter-related giveaways for the launch, so make sure you get involved. We also have a variety of 8-ounce scented candles, sugar scrubs, and bath bombs. If this sounds up your or someone you know's alley, look us up on Facebook and on Etsy. Just search Pig and a Pug. Did you get that? Pig and a Pug. Also, as a special thank you for your support, we are offering all listeners of the Three Links Oddcast a special coupon code for 24% off your order. Just use the code THANKYOU24 at checkout. And I'll say it again, Pig and a Pug. All right, so we want to say thank you to our sponsors, Pig and a Pug Bath Stuff. We wanted to just go into our next segment here and do something a little bit different. This is a little bit more of a personal segment. We're each going to talk about a story, either personal or something that we've heard about that represents the importance of Odd Fellowship in their life, or possibly something that you might take from it. So Ainsley, would you like to kick it off?
I would love to. So I decided to kind of do a little personal kind of thing for my kind of gift of Odd Fellowship story here. And I wanted to basically discuss a little bit about how Odd Fellowship has given me a purpose as an artist. And as I'm sure probably by now everybody knows, I am a tattoo artist by trade. I have an art degree. I'm always been an artist my whole life. But I've been focusing on my tattooing for the better part of 2 decades at this point. And other art stuff has long been one of those things that dropped by the wayside. And I always kind of felt really bad about that. And I never quite knew what I wanted to do artistically outside of tattooing, because there's just, did I want to do paintings? Did I want to do a comic book? What did I want to do? And I always kind of hemmed and hawed and kind of felt a little guilty, like I was not, reaching my full artistic potential. And when I came across Odd Fellowship, I immediately kind of found a place to express myself artistically for myself, but have it also be purposeful and functional, which I like. Creating art that has a purpose and has a function. It's not just art for art's sake. It does, improve something. And through being an Oddfellow, I've been able to design so many things, and one of them I will be mentioning later in the episode. But it's given me a creative, artistic passion to pursue outside of my tattoo career that really has just given me so much in return. And I love seeing other members in lodges grabbing hold of my designs that I make and use it on their own marketing materials or t-shirts, or edit the design for their own wishes or whatever. And I love that. It's art that I literally get to give away for free every single day. And it makes me feel good, like I've done something helpful. And I get a lot of satisfaction over scrolling on Facebook and seeing a t-shirt that was something I designed, or a lodge got a banner and they used, the eye that I had designed, or something, something like that. That makes me feel really good inside. It gives me a lot of satisfaction. So that's my gift of Odd Fellowship that I had.
Well, thank you so much, brother. I think that's wonderful. Odd Fellowship gives something different to each of us, and all of us just love how much you have contributed your artistic talents to Odd Fellowship. You really brought the graphic language of our fraternal order to life again, and that has been wonderful. Well, I've got a little something that I want to share, and this is not my own story. I've got my reasons for being an Odd Fellow. I've been a member now for 20 years, and I have enjoyed all of it. I get to meet great people. I get to have a lot of fun and do a lot of things. But in my travels, when I've met Odd Fellows and Rebeccas from all across the country and really from all around the world, I've heard a lot of other people's stories about Odd Fellowship and what makes it meaningful to them. And there was a particular story that I heard a couple years ago. Gosh, I don't even remember how long ago. But I got to meet an elderly member in another one of the jurisdictions that I went to visit. And he told me the story of why he joined the Odd Fellows. And when he was just starting out in life, maybe early 20s, he was married. He'd been married for a short time. His wife was pregnant, and he was working as a logger. He was actually working in the rigging, which is the guys down there who tie the steel cables around the logs to drag them up the hill, where they go on the trucks and get hauled out of there. It's a very physically demanding job, and didn't always pay as well as it does now. And starting out with a young bride, she got pregnant, and they were so happy and looking forward to the birth of their first child. But unfortunately, when the time came and they made the trip to the hospital, their little girl was stillborn. And for somebody who was barely making any money and just struggling to make ends meet, that was just a crushing blow, not only for the financial reasons of not being able to deal with that kind of a tragedy, but the emotional toll that it took on them. So as they were sitting there sharing their grief in the hospital room, one of the doctors at that hospital happened to hear about the predicament and what had happened. And he came into the room and he introduced himself, and he said, "I belong to a group, and we're going to help you out. We have a cemetery up on the hill outside of town. We're going to get you a casket for your little baby, and we're going to bury her for you and give her a gravestone." in that moment, that was such an amazing thing to do for that young couple. Of course, the group that that doctor belonged to was his local Oddfellows Lodge. And so that young logger, he found out and he said, "Who are you? What do you do?" The doctor said, "This is who we are and this is what we do. We help people. And I can see that you are in a place of need right now. So we're here to help you out." And that logger, he joined that Oddfellows Lodge. And now he's been a member for over 50 years.
Oh,
Now,
wow.
obviously, because of the very personal, very heart-wrenching nature of the story, I don't want to give out any more details than that because it was shared with me in confidence. But when I heard that story, I thought, yes, that is exactly the purpose of Odd Fellowship. All the titles are nice, all of the marching around, we do beautiful things, we look great in our tuxedos. But the ultimate expression of Odd Fellowship is when we can be there in our communities and we can alleviate at least a little bit of the suffering outside of our lodge halls. You know, was that a little bit of a risk for that lodge to step outside of their membership and say, "Hey, we're going to help somebody out in the community"? Yes, it was. But you know what? That act of kindness was both immeasurable for that young couple, and it also created a dedicated Oddfellow for life. So when I heard that story, I thought it was just about the most powerful expression of what Oddfellow could and should be, because we have this incredible capacity to do good and to truly spread friendship, love, and truth. And so that's my heartwarming tale of Odd Fellowship for our Christmas special. Christopher, I'm hoping you've got something that can follow that up.
Of course. I will say that is stepping up and being an example of the type of things that we want to be doing. Yeah, there's a big difference between talking about making a difference in someone else's life and actually making a difference in someone else's life. Because when something like that happens, there's no way to deal with that easily. So it's nice to have people that don't even know you come in and be willing to help in any way they can. That's great. For mine, I wanted to talk about a little bit about my personal experience in Odd Fellowship, because when presented with the idea of the show, I realized that Odd Fellowship in general is important to me, and everyone's experience is slightly different. When I became the Noble Grand of my lodge, wow, it seems like a long time ago now, but it really wasn't. I got asked by someone that I had talked about trying to have become a member, and they had said, "What do I get out of it?" And it's a wonderful question, and I can answer it with my normal riddle and say, you could get out of Odd Fellowship whatever you want. I've been writing an article for the Heart and Hand blog, which I'm pretty excited to get some of my thoughts on Odd Fellowship out. But the tentative title is "Your Lodge Can Just Be an Old Building." And it's true. What you can get out of Odd Fellowship is you can just go to an old building, and you could go there twice a month, and you could spend year upon year doing the same old thing and not really doing anything with it. Or you can grab the reins of Odd Fellowship and steer it to where you think that it should be. I wanted to do a few simple things. One of them that I thought we should do is showcasing the photographs of current members. How many lodges have you been to where there's pictures of all the members that are currently members hanging on the walls in the place? Probably not many. Along with accomplishments, we spend so much time worrying about those wonderful certificates that we get from all of the things that we've done in Oddfellowship. What do we do with them? We could display them for other people to see when they come and they visit our lodge. One of the things that I also did was I wanted to make lodge breakfasts. Now, this is a simple thing, cooking some waffles and some eggs and whatnot for the lodge members. But I think meeting as a group outside of a meeting, the lodge has a completely different feel, and it's nice to be able to try and do something like that. We had a Mother's Day breakfast last year in our lodge, and thank God at least one of the members that turned up actually was a mother, or else it would have just been a bunch of guys eating waffles, I guess. So one of the things that I did was I put up a Christmas tree, and it might not be a huge thing, but I've always felt that people just act a little bit different around the holidays, and putting up a Christmas tree when you come into the lodge, I think it made a difference. We had a few members in the year that I took over have pretty serious heart attacks. And I remember going to visit them while they were in the hospital, and that was something that I made a point to do every single day, because that was one of those things that we sign up for when we become Oddfellows. Every single day, I was walking to go visit these guys in the hospital so I could go there and I could aggravate them so that I know that their hearts work properly, so we could get them back to the meetings so they can participate. It also made me take a look at a lot of the things that we were eating. Again, a small change, but we went from eating pizza and cake and crap like that. I started cooking health conscious food for all of us, because if I play a little part, then that helps me sleep at night. I think also one of the biggest accomplishments that I can boast in my time as an Oddfellow would be meeting someone like Toby, because as we talk about being the example of who we want in our organization and who we want to portray our organization as being, this isn't just a I love Toby rant, but Toby is a living, breathing example of all things that we should be aiming towards being in Oddfellowship. And I'm sure that there is more than a handful of people out there that would agree.
I agree. And, I wholeheartedly agree with you.
When we had the Grand Lodge of Montana sessions 2 years ago, it seems like at least a decade ago now.
I know.
But Toby was the belle of the ball. Toby showed up, the most personable guy. He's got literally a story to tell about any subject. And get this guy near a piano, and he's getting the old ladies shaken and all sorts of stuff, So, Toby is the kind of guy that, in the Grand Lodge of Montana, I mean, you were there. How many people do you think were there? Couple hundred or whatever in the, the big thing. You always knew where Toby was at all times.
Usually in the hospitality suite.
Well, yeah, that too. Yeah. Toby, oh yeah, no, he's the one that's crying with the bottle of Jim Beam in the corner. No, but I mean, I no word of a lie. If you hear 8 people laughing, that's where Toby is. Toby's over there. Toby was the MC for the Grand Lodge of Montana, and just walked into a jurisdiction that he had never been to, and walked in like he owned the place, and then dropped that microphone on the floor and walked out, and everyone was like, holy crap, who was that guy? So I joined Oddfellowship at kind of a weird time, and it became a real important thing to me during the worst period of my life. And it really gave me something to concentrate on that wasn't just complete and utter misery. So Toby, you've seen my collection and my, I don't even know what to call it at this point, because in the beginning I started organizing some papers and it grew to, I mean, probably over 1,000 pieces of Oddfellows memorabilia.
Mm-hmm.
So whereas some people come up with great fundraising ideas for Oddfellowship, I literally put my hands on pretty much every piece of history having to do with Oddfellowship in Montana. And I mean, I spent the better part of 2 years organizing documents and, you know, polishing pins and, you know, all sorts of crap, learning about, you know, people that have been dead for 100 years that have just so happened to walk in the same room as me.
Yeah.
So Oddfellowship can literally be whatever you want it to be. You could sit in a room and complain for 40 years. You could be the MC of the Grand Lodge of Montana, or you could show some sort of obsessive compulsive tendency and organize, you know, sick payout request documents from the late 1800s. Literally whatever you want. You know, we all have something to offer. And when I became the noble grand of my lodge, I wrote out this long speech or whatever. And that was one of the things that I wanted to impress on the lodge, is that everyone has something to offer. Absolutely everybody. It could mean something different to everybody. That's my biggest thing. One of the things that, you know, I've noticed as a result of that, I am very proud of the lodge here, and I'm very proud to know, you know, the history of Oddfellowship in Montana. Being the gatekeeper for that person is kind of a great feeling. I look like I should be the gatekeeper of the history of a secret society, so it's about time.
It's the beard and tattoos. That's what makes you look like an Oddfellow.
Precisely. And I can speak in tongues, so that's good.
Ooh.
There were a few negative things, and it's not, you know, to be a Debbie Downer on the whole thing or just go on some rant and complain about everything. They are things that just happen in the course of doing business and just life in general that sometimes we might not plan for. One of the things that I noticed, and you know, we talk about ritual, we talk about doing the same things the same way every time. When things change, people get upset, and that's, you know, no matter what it is. Some people want to complain for the sake of complaining, and some people just don't deal with change. There's all sorts of variables to that, but you're going to lose members. Some of our members will pass away. Some of our members will quit and go join another lodge. But we need to figure for that, you know, because sometimes losing members in a lodge, you know, when you have a real big personality in the lodge and they're not there anymore, then what happens? You know, that's up to us. Also, one of the things that our lodge was blessed with, but also it's a little bit of an added headache that we might not realize would happen. We were lucky enough to have a rental property, so we had some income for the lodge, whether we were doing some fundraising or not. Well, it's all fine and dandy, but over a period of time, that's going to require decisive decisions to be made that could you know, seriously affect someone's livelihood, or, you know, the flow of a you know, a street in a city like ours, that we owned a bookstore basically in the apex of downtown Missoula, and, you know, the repercussions of a bookstore that had been there for almost 40 years leaving the downtown area. That's some of the things that we don't think about. You know, Oddfellowship can be whatever you make it, but there there are choices to everything that we do in Odd Fellowship.
Well, I think that's very insightful. And speaking as someone who has been there and seen your collection, you have done an absolutely amazing job. I don't think you give yourself enough credit for the way in which you've helped to spark the revival in Odd Fellowship in Montana, because both you and Brother Kalen from Great Falls, Rainbow number 28, the two of you have done so much to reinvigorate and re-energize Odd Fellowship in Montana. I am just constantly impressed when I see the work that both of you do. First of all, for Brother Kalen, all of the stuff that he has collected and has stored up in the hall there at Great Falls, and all of those wonderful pieces. When we were there a couple years ago for Grand Lodge, he took us out back and showed us, and there were just so many beautiful pieces, and it was fantastic. And then there's the collection that you've put together in Missoula. I'm really hoping that as we come out of this pandemic, some of the effort that Brother Kalen has put in to get some new lodges going there in Montana is going to pay off. It's been a couple months since I last talked to him, but he told me things are still moving along with trying to reestablish Montana number 1 in Helena. And also there's a group in Sydney, Montana that's interested. And Sydney, of course, that's the other end of the state. That's almost in North Dakota. But, once again, like we said earlier, there is a huge call for Odd Fellowship out there. We have to be able to step up and heed the call and then respond to it.
Sorry, we need more venues for Toby to have at his disposal to play the accordion in. That's basically what it is. Toby needs Odd Fellowship to spread because that's going to be his in to more accordion gigs.
That's right.
The Oddfellows Lodge World Tour.
That's it.
That's right. We can have accordion music, and then the Rebeccas can provide us with Jell-O with shredded carrots and raisins in it.
That's your go-to. You do love that, don't you?
There is a certain genre of food that came about as a result of both the Great Depression and then people who survived the Great Depression who suddenly had more money in the 1950s. And that whole food culture has sort of coalesced in fraternal orders, because so much of the culture of fraternal orders that we now have was set 70 years ago by the community of people who were there at the time. And they thought that things like deviled ham and Jell-O with shredded vegetables was the height of cuisine. I cannot tell you how many times I've been to lodge installations and there's a platter piled up with sandwiches made of white bread with the crusts cut off, cut diagonally, filled with either egg salad or tuna salad. Because that was poor people food of the 1930s, and they just made it slightly fancier to serve in lodges in the 50s.
And I'm sure things like that were easy to make, like, in mass quantities as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And, it's so funny because you go to some lodges, like when I go to my home lodge in Seattle, that's a lodge full of younger people, 30s and up. And so they're eating things like
hummus and couscous.
Yeah, they're eating Indian food, and then they're having baked brie and just this whole menagerie of foods from around the world. Then you drive an hour away to the lodge where they're eating beef stew and biscuits. Now, personally, I'm going to go for the beef stew and biscuits because that is a good hearty meal to me. But
that's why I want to join a lodge in the South so we can have soul food dinners twice a week.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice?
You know what I'm saying?
Twice a week.
Twice a week, but not twice. At least twice a month. But if I fit in really well, then I go and I have dinner at lodge members' houses twice a week.
Yeah. See, what you need to do, get in touch with Tori Kite from Iron Links number 5 down in Atlanta. There you go. He can hook you up.
Oh, yeah.
He can totally hook you up on that and get you some good soul food. Some smothered pork chops.
I'm talking about an associate membership down there.
That was one of the best things about going to Sovereign Grand Lodge in North Carolina is every day for lunch, Greg Powers, who went with me, he and I would go to a different little restaurant around the Sovereign Grand Lodge headquarters. And I kid you not, I had the most amazing fried chicken at this little place just like 2 blocks west of the Sovereign Grand Lodge office named Miss Aura's. It was incredible. They had a little old lady in the back.
Oh my God, was that Miss Aura?
Cast iron skillet.
And if you're listening, and if Miss Aura is listening, you could send us some shirts. Just look us up, 3 Links Oddcast. The number 3
include some chickens with
yeah.
Include some chicken with the shirts.
Yes.
Yeah, because that is one of the absolute best things. That, and then of course North Carolina is a great place for barbecue. So we went to a couple of different barbecue places. I think I had the meat in 2, and one of the 2 sides was red slaw. Oh, that stuff was amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
North Carolina is also a great state if you love tree frogs, which everyone knows that I do. And I spent a month in North Carolina last year, and I probably caught 200 tree frogs in that month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's a good story.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's a good story.
Oh, yeah. I can totally imagine someone with your background in herpetology.
And just annoying things in general. Oh, you're minding your own business? Come here, mate. Let's have a look at you.
Oh, we should probably wrap up our Christmas episode here with our traditional ending segment, the Odd Podge. This is the place where we get to share just whatever we feel like talking about. And I know you guys have some really exciting stuff you want to share. So I'm going to go first. I want to give an update on my project to make new recordings of our odes. I am 2/3 of the way done with the project. I have recorded the new versions of the Oddfellows Lodge odes and the Encampment odes. I'm waiting on a female vocalist who's going to be recording the Rebecca odes. And then once it's all done, I will put it together. I will let everybody know through the Sovereign Grand Lodge and all the various Grand Lodges around the world that they are available. So I want everybody to know I am still working on my duties as Sovereign Grand Musician, even during a pandemic.
That is awesome. I'm excited to hear those. And hopefully that could be something that we could even just put under the members' resources on the Sovereign website.
I hope so. My ultimate goal is to make the music as accessible as possible, because I really truly believe this. When we sing together in Lodge, we physically create the harmony that we seek to achieve in the world. And so to me, singing the opening and closing odes is very important. You know, it's been very disappointing that lodges have had to skip the odes during the pandemic. I'm hoping that everybody can get back to it when this is all over and we can sing heartily once again.
I am embarrassed to report that we do not sing the odes in my lodge, but maybe now that we have updated recording of it, that might be something we could start doing. Because unfortunately, the recording that I have now is a little slow. It's a piano accompaniment, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just the tempo is too slow, and it would just take like 2.5 minutes to get through the opening ode. And most people, after they sing, you know, it's like singing Happy Birthday. You know, like it gets to a certain point, and people just kind of start dropping off and kind of hope it ends. So maybe with a better kind of updated version, that will encourage a little bit of group participation. So I will definitely be keeping my ears out for that.
Excellent. Well, who wants to go next with their Odd Podge?
So to kind of circle back to my gift of that Odd Fellowship has given me with the artistic focus. And so for the last, in probably a little over a year now, I have been working on a project along with Michael Greenziger of California. He's been working on this project for probably started researching it and kind of doing his prep work about 3 years ago when he wrote his district deputy grand master guide for California when he was grand instructor. So this has been a project that has been in the works for a bit, and we are hoping to have it out at a very specific date, but he asked me not to mention it just in case some sort of calamity happens and it gets postponed. So I'm just going to say coming in 2021, so coming next year, I'm proud to announce the Oddfellows Primer. And we are doing a whole package job to make it seem like this book is something that you will pull off the shelf that was written in the late 1800s in the style of Grosh, of Paschal Donaldson, of the great Oddfellow classics that everybody still reads today. But it's for a modern audience. The verbiage is a little bit more streamlined and updated for modern sensibilities. And all the content is for today's Oddfellow, but the style of it is just kind of a throwback because we just really like that aesthetic. And why not go to the time when Oddfellow, the organization, was in its glory days to kind of bring some of that magic to today? Yeah, so it's going to be basically a how-to book, and it's called the Oddfellows Primer, and it's going to be very heavily illustrated by me, and it's probably going to be one of the largest collections of new Oddfellows artwork in probably close to 125 years or so. I'm just really proud of this project, and whenever it goes on sale, we'll be selling it on Amazon. And hopefully we will be selling it through the Sovereign Grand Lodge as well, if possible. And we just want this to be one of those books that for the next 10, 20 years, to have this book be the go-to for any new member that is looking to learn more about how to be an Oddfellow that you don't find in the charge book. Things that have traditions that might have been lost along the way, but through either talking to older members or witnessing it ourselves, we are able to bring those traditions to a larger audience. Little things like draping the charter, how to properly drape a charter, and the way you should do it using a rod or like a spear staff, so you're not actually touching the black fabric with your hand. Little details like that we're hopefully going to, open other people's eyes to, and maybe they could start incorporating some of these older practices in their lodge to make it a little bit more meaningful to be a member, and have them also understand the how and the why we do things the way we do, instead of asking a question and just having an older member just be, that's how we've always done it. So yeah, I'm very excited about this project. It's been a labor of love. Whenever it's released, we're going to try to make it at a very affordable price point. We are not going to make a penny off of it. Any funds raised will go to Michael's Grandmaster project whenever he's Grandmaster of California next year. Yeah, that's my gift to Oddfellows after I explained the gift of Odd Fellowship to me.
Well, thank you so much. Brother Michael sent me a little preview of the opening and the first chapter of the book. And I've got to say, I am completely impressed with the wonderful job that you did on the graphics. It looks clean and modern, but yet it has that sort of decorated sensibility from the Victorian era. And I think this is going to be not just a wonderful source of information for years to come. It's going to be a collector's item. This is going to be a book that people are going to look at and admire just for the sheer beauty of how it's put together. And the information is excellent. Brother Michael has done some incredible, very deep, very scholarly research, which is something really greatly in need in Odd Fellowship. So thank you very much for all of your work on this, Brother Ainsley. And we'll have to get Brother Michael on here so he can talk about the book once it's ready for release. We can get lots of sales. We want to generate lots of money for his project as Grand Master of California.
Yes.
I'm personally really excited for that. That sounds like it's going to be really cool.
He even picked out he bought this really cool font for it that is like an old-fashioned kind of a grungy sort of font. It's not perfect. It's like a very old kind of letterpress looking like typeset font.
I noticed that.
Yeah. So that along with the artwork, and even though the artwork, I try to kind of harken back to the illustrations of the old days, it's still, I feel like a lot of it's still definitely my style. And I've also included a bunch of the other images I've created over the years for the order as well. So it'll be like a nice kind of compendium of pretty much all the Oddfellows art that I've created over the last 5 or so years. And yeah, I'm really proud of this project. It's one of those things that it will, even though it's not a monetary gain, it's a different type of gain that I feel like this is going to be like, probably, like, if nothing else is remembered about me as an Oddfellow, I hope that this book is my legacy for the order.
I think that it will be. This is going to be a fantastic book. Every member needs to buy at least one copy for themselves, and lodges really should have copies on hand. They should order in bulk, have 10 copies on hand, and when you get a new member, give that new member 2 things. Give them a copy of your lodge bylaws, give them a copy of this new book, because it does such a good job of explaining Odd Fellowship to new people. This is going to be just an invaluable resource.
And it's the way Michael wrote it is not just, a stale kind of like instructional guide that, you're reading like headphone instructions, how to connect your Bluetooth or whatever. It's written in a way to, hearkening back to the old days, like we really look to the Reverend Grosh Oddfellows pocket guide or whatever version of the book that of that manual as our template for this. And the feeling of I'm reading this and I'm inspired that's what we want. We want to inspire people and elevate them and empower them. And the writing style and the art, I feel we worked very hard to create a cohesive unity between the two languages there of written word and visual and there's like a lot of little Easter eggs in the art as well, little symbols, and a lot of the art. I was an art history major in school, so a lot of the art is based off of well-known historical images that I kind of repurposed to be for Oddfellows. For example, the story where Adam as the first Oddfellow, which Adam being the first Oddfellow. So I took I did a redraw of Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel, the birth of man, the creation of man, where the God and Adam's fingers are about to touch. I put Adam in an apron and a collar, so like the 1800s regalia, and he's holding a heart and hand staff.
Yeah,
and so like little things like that were our nods to like art history and things that I appreciate just for myself, and then it also helps illustrate the book in a kind of a little bit of a funny tongue-in-cheek way.
That's going to be a fantastic book, and probably spring of 2021, as it gets a little closer to being available, we'll get Michael on to talk about it, because he's a fascinating guest, really has a lot of knowledge about Odd Fellowship, and I think he's done a tremendous service to the order by writing this book that we have really, really needed. Well, Christopher, that brings it to you. What do you have to share with us on the Odd Podge?
I have 2 quick nuggets for the fine people of Lake Stevens, Washington. So the first thing, I received this in the mail yesterday, actually, which is Ghostwatch Photozine, Volume 2. So this is like a self-published DIY zine about paranormal experiences, and it's put out by a fella who's a Mason in Connecticut. His name's Paul Longo, and I grew up in the hardcore and heavy metal scene in New York, so I love a good zine, and I specifically love one about paranormal stuff. I'm actually going to be writing a little snippet for their next issue about hauntings in an Oddfellows lodge. So hopefully you guys can sign up. You can look him up on Instagram. His username is Ghostwatch, and the O is the letter 0 because, you know, that's a thing. And because Ghostwatch is probably some like Russian techno DJ with like a million followers. So yeah, you could sign up and he'll send them to you for nothing. Paper quality is great and cool little stories, and it's about ghosts. Everyone loves a ghost story.
Nice.
Number 2, shameless plug. So this is where Toby's going to insert a drum roll. Right there.
Yes.
Cool. Thanks for that drum roll, Toby. So starting next month, I have a new podcast coming out, which is called The Lonely Hammer. And what that it basically is I am a supporter of the English Premier League football club, West Ham United. And the way I reckon is I am the most geographically isolated West Ham supporter in the world. And I'm going to share my opinion about obscure West Ham games or just random bits of West Ham United, a little bit of banter, but from a complete outsider and also pessimist perspective. And it's going to be called the Lonely Hammer Podcast. You'll be able to find it wherever you can download podcasts and wherever I can sneak it into. I'll probably try and do some cool giveaways. And yeah, I'd appreciate it if you listened.
Wonderful. Well, that pretty much wraps it up for the Christmas episode of the Three Links Oddcast. We're going to take a couple weeks off over the course of the holidays. So our next episode won't be coming out until probably the second week of January, probably anywhere from the 8th to the 10th, because we do have lives aside from just podcasting and Odd Fellowship. So we're going to take some time and enjoy that time as best we can over the holidays. I want to thank everybody out there for listening to us. And remember, if you want to get in touch with us, we've got our website, threelinksoddcast.com, all spelled out. And then you can also send us an email at threelinksoddcast with the number 3. That's the number 3 links oddcast at gmail.com. So on behalf of Ainsley and Sergio, who's still on loan to the Material Sciences Division, and our guest host, Christopher, myself, Toby, want to thank all of you and wish you a very Merry Christmas.